The air in Marcus Davies's bedroom was thick with the quiet hum of ambition, a stark contrast to the distant rumble of the city outside their suburban home. At 12 years old, Marcus was a boy of meticulous habits and an insatiable curiosity, his neat room a testament to his organized mind. Every book was perfectly aligned, every model airplane perched at precisely the right angle. His dark, observant eyes, often glued to the sky, tracked the contrails of planes far overhead, mapping their invisible paths across the vast blue. He devoured books on aerodynamics like other kids devoured comic books, and his intricate model planes, painstakingly assembled from thousands of tiny pieces, were less toys and more scientific diagrams brought to life. He wasn't just building, he was learning, dissecting the very essence of flight. Becoming a pilot wasn't a dream for Marcus. It was a destiny he was already meticulously planning. Their home, a warm, inviting space filled with the scent of his mother's cooking and his father's old books, was a safe haven where Marcus's passion was not just tolerated but actively nurtured. His room, in particular, was his personal museum of flight. Posters of sleek fighter jets adorned the walls, shelves overflowed with aviation history texts and flight manuals, and dominating one corner, a meticulously crafted, large-scale model of a Boeing 747 stood sentinel. It was a gift from his father, Mr. Davies, David Davies, a painstaking replica that Marcus had spent countless hours assembling and perfecting. This model wasn't just his most prized possession, it was a symbol of his future, a tangible representation of the skies he longed to command. Mr. Davies was a calm, intellectual, and deeply supportive presence in Marcus's life, a man who seemed to move through the world with quiet authority. He often spent hours patiently explaining complex flight principles, drawing diagrams on whiteboards, or taking Marcus to aviation museums, their visits filled with shared wonder. He was a loving, engaged father, though Marcus sometimes heard hushed phone calls to high-level airport personnel or saw official-looking documents on his father's desk, subtle hints of a demanding professional career that often took him away, but brought with it a significant, unspoken respect. One rainy Saturday, the quiet hum of their home was punctuated by Mr. Davies's frustrated sighs emanating from his study. He was hunched over a new, highly complex model airplane kit, a replica of a vintage biplane, its delicate wiring harness proving particularly challenging. He was visibly frustrated, close to giving up, a rare display of exasperation from the usually composed man. Marcus, entering quietly with a glass of water, observed his father's struggle. His keen eye, accustomed to spotting the minutest flaws in his own intricate models, immediately caught it. A tiny, almost invisible wire, slightly bent, preventing a crucial connection. It was a detail so small, so easily overlooked, that even his intelligent father, usually so adept, had missed it. Marcus didn't speak immediately. He simply set the water down, then gently, carefully, pointed a small finger at the offending wire. "Dad," he murmured, his voice soft, "I think this one needs to be straightened a bit. It's not quite making contact." Mr. Davies, startled, looked up, then leaned closer, his brow furrowed. He picked up his magnifying glass and examined the wire. Sure enough, Marcus was right. With a small, precise tool, he carefully straightened it. A moment later, a tiny LED on the model flickered to life, signaling a successful circuit. Mr. Davies's face lit up with immediate gratitude and immense pride. He clapped Marcus on the shoulder, a warm, genuine laugh rumbling in his chest. "That's my co-pilot," he exclaimed, pulling Marcus into a quick, firm hug. "My eyes aren't what they used to be, but yours, son, they see everything." This simple moment, a quiet collaboration, instantly established Marcus's intelligence, his patience, and his invaluable observation skills, making him deeply sympathetic and admirable. It was his "save the cat" moment, highlighting his quiet competence and unwavering support for those he loved. In his worn but carefully organized backpack, Marcus carried a small metallic badge. It wasn't shiny or flashy, just a plain, official-looking rectangle with a series of numbers and a barely visible QR code. It was a temporary visitor's pass to an FAA facility, given to him by his dad for a rare, upcoming Take Your Kid to Work Day event next month. Its importance wasn't immediately obvious to anyone else, but Marcus handled it with almost religious reverence. He would occasionally take it out, tracing the raised letters with his finger, his imagination soaring, dreaming of the day he could fully use it, of stepping into the hallowed halls where the skies themselves were managed. This badge was the seed of mystery, subtly hinting at his father's true, significant position within the sprawling world of aviation, a revelation waiting for its moment. Even in the warmth of his supportive home, Marcus had begun to understand the subtle, sometimes insidious, undercurrents of systemic bias in the wider world, small seeds of future conflict that often left him feeling subtly, unjustly scrutinized. Once, at a local electronics store, he had approached a white cashier with an intelligent technical question about a complex drone. The cashier had barely looked up, dismissing him with a curt, "Kid, just stick to the toys," before immediately turning with a broad smile to engage with an adult white customer who had asked a far simpler question. Another time, during a family trip through a busy airport, Marcus had noticed a fleeting, uncomfortable glance from a security guard, a subtle profiling despite his polite demeanor and innocent curiosity. It was just a glance, easily dismissed by others, but Marcus felt it, a cold prickle of awareness. He had also recently seen a news report on TV about an airline facing scrutiny for its lack of diversity among its pilots, or a general discussion about implicit biases in hiring practices across industries. These were small, seemingly isolated incidents, but they accumulated, creating a growing understanding within Marcus that his passion, his intelligence, and even his very presence might be perceived differently, prejudged by those who saw him only through the lens of their own preconceived notions. The quiet before the storm was beautiful, but the storm, fueled by these subtle currents of prejudice, was gathering on the horizon, waiting to test not just his knowledge, but his very identity. The air at the bustling regional airport hummed with a symphony of controlled chaos. The distant roar of departing jets vibrated through the ground, a thrilling bass note to Marcus Davies's eager anticipation. He was there with his school's aviation club, a small group of enthusiasts on a special field trip, allowed rare access to areas beyond the usual passenger terminals. The smell of jet fuel, sharp and intoxicating, filled his nostrils. Every detail captivated him. The precise choreography of the ground crew guiding massive aircraft, the intricate dance of luggage carts, the sheer scale of the hangars that loomed like metal titans. He absorbed it all, his mind cataloging every piece of information. He clutched his well-worn notebook, occasionally jotting down observations, his pen scratching furiously. His group, currently focused on a static display of a small single-engine propeller plane, seemed content. But Marcus, ever drawn to the cutting edge of flight, found his gaze continually drifting towards a less frequented part of the tarmac, closer to the active runways. There, a sleek, state-of-the-art regional jet, one he recognized from its distinctive winglets, was undergoing a pre-flight walk-around inspection. His insatiable curiosity, a powerful magnet, pulled him away from his classmates. He subtly separated from the group, drawn by the allure of a closer look, a chance to observe a specific maintenance procedure he'd only read about in books. He still had his special badge in his backpack, a small, official-looking metallic pass, but he preferred to observe from a respectful distance, not wanting to draw attention to himself, just to learn. Meanwhile, striding across the tarmac with an air of practiced authority was Captain Miller. A seasoned commercial airline pilot in his late 50s, Captain Miller was the embodiment of professional competence. His crisp, dark blue uniform was impeccably pressed, his silver wings gleaming on his chest. He carried himself with the confidence of a man who commanded colossal machines and hundreds of lives. He took immense pride in his authority, in the uniform that marked him as a master of the skies. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, a less admirable trait festered: deep-seated prejudices and an inflated sense of superiority. He harbored a visceral distrust of anything that seemed out of place in his meticulously ordered world, especially within his perceived domain of the airport. His internal thoughts, often sharp and judgmental, reflected this bias. A kid like that here, wandering around near my aircraft? Probably up to no good. Always trouble, these types, trying to sneak into places they don't belong. He saw Marcus not as a curious enthusiast, but as an intruder, a potential threat to his orderly and highly controlled environment. Marcus, utterly engrossed, was perfectly still, his eyes locked on the regional jet. He was observing the flight crew as they performed their walk around, noting their methodical movements. His keen vision picked up a subtle detail, a faint, almost imperceptible sheen of hydraulic fluid near the landing gear strut, something the crew seemed to have overlooked. He frowned slightly, mentally cross-referencing it with diagrams he'd studied. He was so focused, so absorbed in his analysis, that he was entirely unaware that he was being observed by Captain Miller, who was making his way towards the very plane Marcus was studying. Marcus hadn't crossed any major security lines, he hadn't touched anything, but his intense focus and seemingly out-of-place presence in a restricted area looked inherently suspicious to Captain Miller's prejudiced eyes. Captain Miller stopped dead in his tracks, his gaze narrowing on Marcus. He watched for a full minute, confirming his biased assumptions. The boy was too close, too intently focused, too different. Without hesitation, without bothering to approach Marcus or ask a single question, Captain Miller pulled out his phone. His voice was low, urgent, and laced with an edge of self-importance as he spoke into the receiver. "This is Captain Miller, Flight 347. I'm on the tarmac near Gate B12. There's a suspicious individual, a young black male, probably around 12 or 13, loitering near the restricted area, looking too closely at the aircraft. Might be casing it, or worse. He seems out of place. I recommend immediate intervention." He spoke with the conviction of a man convinced of his own righteousness, even heroism, for taking such swift, decisive action. He felt completely justified, already picturing the commendation he might receive for his vigilance. Almost immediately, as if materialized from the concrete itself, 2 airport security officers appeared. They were stern, professional, their faces unsmiling. They moved with a purpose that left no doubt about their intentions, heading directly for Marcus. Marcus, still engrossed in his observations, looked up suddenly, startled by their approach. His initial bewilderment quickly morphed into a cold knot of fear as their stern gazes fixed on him. "Son, what are you doing in a restricted area?" one officer asked, his voice sharp. Marcus stammered, trying to explain, his passion abruptly misinterpreted, his innocence challenged by the sudden looming presence of authority. This public accusation, this sudden, unjust confrontation in the heart of the airport, was the point of no return. His peaceful, insulated world had been shattered, forcing him to confront the ugly reality of prejudice head-on. He could not simply go back to being an anonymous, curious boy. He was now a suspect, his dream of flight suddenly overshadowed by the heavy weight of suspicion. The 2 airport security officers, their faces stern and unyielding, closed in on Marcus. The younger officer, a man with a clipped mustache, spoke first, his voice low but firm. "Son, you know this is a restricted area, right? What exactly are you doing here, and why are you so close to an active aircraft?" Their eyes were piercing, assessing, trained to detect deception. Marcus, though his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird, took a deep, steadying breath. His passion for aviation, usually a source of quiet joy, now felt like a spotlight on his vulnerability. "Sir, I'm with the Northwood Middle School Aviation Club," Marcus began, his voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in his hands. He gestured vaguely towards the distant group of his classmates, now barely visible. "We're on a field trip. I just wanted to get a closer look at the plane. I noticed the hydraulic line on the landing gear looked a bit stiff. I was trying to figure out the dihedral angle of the wing on that model too." He instinctively used the technical jargon he'd absorbed from countless books and conversations with his father, hoping his genuine enthusiasm would cut through their suspicion. His demeanor was remarkably calm, his explanation articulate and precise, unexpected from someone being profiled. From a slight distance, Captain Miller observed the scene, a smirk of satisfaction playing on his lips. He watched Marcus, seeing the boy's calm explanation not as innocence, but as a calculated attempt at manipulation, a clever deception to evade consequences. Clever kid, he thought, but not clever enough. Confident in his judgment, Captain Miller strode closer, eager to solidify his position as the vigilant hero. "Don't fall for it, officers," he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. "He's just a kid trying to get out of trouble. Kids like this don't know anything about aviation, unless it's how to hotwire a car or where to stash stolen goods in a cargo hold. He was casing it, I tell you, looking for weaknesses." His words were overtly prejudiced, not just dismissing Marcus's intelligence, but actively maligning his character based on stereotypes. Captain Miller's role as the Type B antagonist, misguided by his ingrained biases, was now unequivocally sealed. The officers exchanged a glance. Captain Miller's words, though harsh, resonated with a certain authority, particularly coming from a uniformed pilot. The younger officer, still holding Marcus's backpack, asked, "Do you have any identification on you, son? Something that confirms your school or your reason for being here?" Marcus, his heart sinking at Captain Miller's cruel words, nodded. His hands trembled slightly as he reached into the main compartment of his backpack. He fumbled past his aviation textbook and his worn notebook until his fingers brushed against the smooth, cold metal. He pulled out the special badge, a sleek, official FAA Administrator's temporary visitor's pass. It was a high-resolution photo of David Davies, his father, smiling confidently, his name clearly printed below, followed by his prominent title, Administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. Marcus held it out, the badge shimmering in the harsh airport light, a beacon of truth. Captain Miller's smug expression, so confidently plastered on his face moments before, instantly vanished. His eyes, initially dismissive, widened in disbelief, and then, sickeningly, in profound horror as his gaze fell upon the badge. He recognized David Davies immediately. Everyone in aviation did. The administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration was not just a powerful figure. He was the powerful figure. The man who held the keys to Captain Miller's very profession, his license, his entire career. The smirk curdled into a look of absolute dread, a nauseating realization. The gravity of his colossal mistake, the direct consequence of his unthinking prejudice, hit him like a physical blow. He saw the uncooperative suspect not as just a kid, but as the son of the FAA Administrator, a boy he had just publicly, maliciously slandered. His face went utterly ashen, the color draining from it until he looked like a ghost. The officers, too, saw the badge. Their sternness dissolved with startling speed, replaced by a mixture of professional deference and visible concern. Their focus, which had been squarely on Marcus, shifted abruptly and dangerously towards Captain Miller. Their gazes hardened, no longer merely questioning, but accusatory. "Captain," the older officer said, his voice dangerously low, each word a hammer blow, "do you have any idea who this boy's father is?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. The power dynamic had been completely inverted. Captain Miller, the proud authority figure, the man who had called the police, was suddenly revealed as the truly vulnerable one, caught in a trap of his own making, his carefully constructed facade of superiority crumbling around him. The realization hit Captain Miller like a sudden, violent downdraft. The boy, the suspicious individual he had so casually maligned, was David Davies' son. David Davies, the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. His meticulously ordered world, built on decades of strict protocol and an unshakable belief in his own judgment, fractured instantly. The cool, professional demeanor he cultivated cracked, revealing a raw, desperate fear beneath. He stood frozen, his face a mask of utter dread, the implications of his actions crashing down on him. The airport concourse, usually a bustling thoroughfare, seemed to amplify the sudden, piercing silence. Passengers paused, their eyes drawn to the huddle of officers, the stricken pilot, and the calm, unwavering boy. This was the arena, a highly public and visible space. Every curious gaze a spotlight intensifying Captain Miller's humiliation. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "What's going on? Is that a pilot?" A few quick-thinking individuals pulled out their phones, discreetly beginning to record, turning a private catastrophe into a public spectacle. Captain Miller felt the collective weight of their stares, the sudden, palpable shift from professional respect to bewildered judgment. He was utterly alone in his predicament, his colleagues and airline staff now actively avoiding eye contact, like startled birds scattering from a predator. His carefully cultivated professional facade wasn't just cracking, it was shattering. The senior security officer, his voice now dangerously low and slow, pressed Captain Miller. "Captain, we need to understand exactly what transpired here. You called this in as a suspicious individual casing an aircraft. Can you elaborate on your assessment, given who this individual turns out to be?" Each word was a calculated jab, forcing Miller to confront his prejudice directly. The ticking clock of mounting professional repercussions had begun. Just then, a figure of unmistakable authority strode purposefully towards them. It was Ms. Henderson, the airport operations manager, her face grim. She had clearly received the urgent call from the security desk. Her arrival added another layer of immediate pressure, elevating the stakes exponentially. She was a no-nonsense professional, known for her strict adherence to rules and her intolerance for discriminatory behavior. She looked from the bewildered officers to the ashen Captain Miller. Then finally, her gaze softened slightly as it landed on Marcus. "Captain Miller," Ms. Henderson stated, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "Security reports indicate you initiated this alarm. Explain yourself, now." Captain Miller stammered, his mind racing, desperately searching for an escape. His entire career, his reputation, his very future in aviation, was hanging by a single hair. "Ma'am, Ms. Henderson, it was a misunderstanding. The boy he was close to the aircraft, in a restricted zone. My duty, you understand. Vigilance." He tried to sound authoritative, professional, but his voice wavered, betraying his inner turmoil. He couldn't bring himself to apologize, or even truly acknowledge Marcus, his ingrained prejudice warring with the overwhelming reality of the consequences. He avoided Marcus's gaze, looking everywhere, but at the boy he had just slandered. He was trapped, caught between his ingrained bias and the devastating repercussions, visibly sweating, stammering, struggling to find words that would salvage his ruin. Marcus, meanwhile, stood quietly, observing Captain Miller's agonizing disintegration. He didn't interrupt. He didn't gloat. His eyes, clear and unblinking, simply watched, a quiet strength radiating from his small frame. He was the calm center of the storm, his composure making Captain Miller's discomfort even more acute, a silent testament to the unjust accusation he had faced. The contrast between the flustered, prejudiced pilot and the dignified, accused boy was stark, a powerful tableau for all who witnessed it. The weight of Captain Miller's world, and all its privileges, was about to come crashing down. The air in the concourse crackled with unspoken tension, every eye fixed on Captain Miller. His face, once a mask of arrogant self-assurance, was now a portrait of desperate terror. His carefully constructed world was crumbling. Ms. Henderson, the airport operations manager, stood before him, her arms crossed, her expression a chilling blend of disappointment and firm authority. The security officers flanked Marcus, their presence a silent, unwavering testament to the boy's innocence and the pilot's grave error. Captain Miller knew his career, his very identity, was about to be obliterated. In a last, desperate, self-serving plea, he turned to Ms. Henderson, his voice raspy. "Ma'am, please, it was a misunderstanding. A lapse in judgment. I was merely being vigilant. The boy, he was in an unauthorized area. As a pilot, my responsibility is to security, to protecting the passengers and the aircraft. I simply misread the situation. It was an overabundance of caution, nothing more. I assure you, I am not prejudiced. I simply followed protocol." He tried to explain away his actions as an excess of professional duty, rather than admitting his profound prejudice. He subtly tried to shift blame, to minimize Marcus's presence and actions, exposing his true, cowardly character in this agonizing moment of Nin Tho. He was clinging to the last vestiges of his pride, hoping to escape the consequences of his bigotry. Ms. Henderson's eyes narrowed. She had seen through such flimsy excuses countless times. She cast a brief, knowing glance at the security officers, then at Marcus, who remained still, observing Captain Miller's pathetic struggle with quiet dignity. Then, Ms. Henderson turned back to Captain Miller, her voice cutting through the hushed silence of the concourse like a razor. "Captain Miller," she began, her tone devoid of emotion, "your vigilance has resulted in the false accusation and public humiliation of a minor. Furthermore, this minor is Marcus Davies, the son of David Davies, the administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration." The name hung in the air, a death knell for Captain Miller's career. His face drained completely of color. He visibly flinched, as if struck. Ms. Henderson didn't stop there. "Effective immediately," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. "You are suspended from duty pending a full investigation by both the airline and the FAA. Your credentials will be confiscated, and you are to report to Human Resources immediately. Any further attempts to justify your discriminatory behavior will result in immediate termination." Captain Miller stood utterly defeated, his proud shoulders slumping, his head bowed. His public shaming was absolute and immediate, his authority completely stripped away for all to witness. He was a humiliated figure, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him, a consequence of his deep-seated prejudice. His downfall was swift and commensurate with his villainy. Marcus, despite the chaos around him, remained remarkably composed. He felt a surge of relief, but no desire to gloat. He looked at Captain Miller, then at the vast open concourse, and then up at the ceiling, as if gazing through it to the endless sky beyond. His voice, though quiet, carried an unexpected resonance. "I just want to fly," he said, not to Captain Miller, but to the air around him. "I want to be a pilot someday, to see the world from up there." His simple statement, so full of pure, undiluted passion, subtly highlighted the cruel irony of Captain Miller's actions. A man who sought to prevent a boy from even approaching the very dream he embodied. Marcus's quiet dignity and unwavering passion made his victory even more profound, a testament to the unquenchable flame within him. Just as the climax reached its emotional peak, a commanding presence entered the concourse. It was Mr. Davies, Marcus's father. He walked with a calm, purposeful stride, his composure radiating an almost palpable authority. His eyes, though assessing the scene, held a quiet, simmering fury. He didn't yell or create a scene. His presence alone commanded attention. He went directly to Marcus, his face softening with immense love and concern. He pulled his son into a firm, reassuring embrace, a gesture of profound love and unwavering support. "Marcus," he murmured, his voice low. He then turned his gaze, cold and unwavering, to Ms. Henderson and the still trembling Captain Miller. His mere presence and the quiet, firm questions he now posed to Ms. Henderson carried immense weight. He didn't need to explicitly state his title. His demeanor, his son's name, and the swift action taken by Ms. Henderson spoke volumes. Onlookers, who had initially been merely curious or mildly annoyed by the disruption, now fully grasped the magnitude of the injustice that had occurred. Their faces shifted from curiosity to dawning understanding, then outrage at the pilot's clear prejudice, and finally, admiration for Marcus's quiet resilience, and a palpable satisfaction at Captain Miller's well-deserved downfall. Whispers of, "That's the FAA Administrator's son," rippled through the crowd like a wave, making Captain Miller's humiliation complete, his once esteemed name now a symbol of disgrace. This collective recognition of injustice and Marcus's quiet, dignified vindication provided a powerful, cathartic release. The concourse, once a stage for prejudice, was now a testament to truth. The public spectacle at the airport slowly dissipated, leaving behind a lingering sense of disquiet and the profound weight of consequence. Captain Miller, stripped of his authority and dignity, was quickly escorted away by airport personnel, his face still a mask of utter humiliation. He was immediately placed on administrative leave, a prelude to the inevitable. The airline, facing immense public scrutiny and the silent, powerful pressure emanating from the office of the FAA Administrator, issued a swift and unambiguous public apology. Their statement condemned the discriminatory actions of their pilot in the strongest terms, promising a full investigation and reaffirming their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Captain Miller was eventually fired. his once stellar career irrevocably ruined, his reputation as a respected pilot forever tainted by his ingrained prejudice. The repercussions extended beyond him. Ms. Henderson, the airport operations manager, though not directly complicit, faced a stern reprimand for the systemic issues her airport clearly harbored. She was compelled to implement new, rigorous diversity and sensitivity training programs across all airport staff, a concrete effort to address the biases that had allowed such an injustice to occur. For Marcus, the immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of relief and profound validation. Mr. Davies, his father, remained a pillar of unwavering support and quiet strength. Deeply proud of Marcus's composure and truthfulness in the face of such unwarranted accusation, he ensured that the incident, while painful, would only serve to strengthen his son's path. Mr. Davies leveraged his considerable influence not for retribution, but for opportunity. He secured Marcus a unique private mentorship opportunity with a renowned black pilot, a true pioneer in the field who had broken countless barriers. This wasn't just a pilot. This was a role model, a living testament to resilience and excellence, who could truly nurture Marcus's passion and guide him through the realities of the aviation world. The FAA Administrator also personally ensured that Marcus received a formal, public apology, not just from the airline, but from the airport authority itself, accompanied by VIP access to any future aviation events, a symbolic acknowledgement of his inherent right to belong in these spaces. A few days later, the quiet calm of their newly restored home embraced Marcus and his father. The incident, while still fresh, felt like a distant storm. Marcus sat on his bedroom floor, surrounded by his meticulously crafted model airplanes, the large-scale Boeing 747 still pride of place. Mr. Davies entered, a cup of warm milk for Marcus, and sat gently beside him, carefully avoiding disturbing a half-assembled fighter jet. He reached out and gently touched the wing of the 747 model, his gaze thoughtful. "You know, son," Mr. Davies began, his voice soft, full of a deep, resonant pride. "That day, a man's prejudice tried to dim your light. He tried to tell you where you didn't belong, but you didn't let it. You stood tall, you spoke your truth, and you shone brighter. Never forget that. And never ever let anyone tell you where you don't belong, especially when you know in your heart that you do." Marcus looked up at his father, his eyes reflecting a deeper understanding, a wisdom beyond his years. The experience had forged something new within him, a steely resolve tempered by the injustice he had faced. "It wasn't just about me, Dad," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "It was about all the kids who get looked at wrong, who get judged before they even open their mouths. I don't want anyone else to feel that way." This simple conversation solidified their shared values, their changed perspectives, and the profound lesson learned. It wasn't just about a boy being vindicated. It was about confronting prejudice with dignity, transforming a moment of injustice into a catalyst for positive change. The quiet calm was not just a return to peace, but a foundation for a future built on purpose and passion. 15 years later, the name Marcus Davies resonated through the halls of major airlines and the quiet corridors of policymaking. He was no longer just the bright boy from Detroit with a passion for planes. He was a highly respected, accomplished commercial airline pilot, a captain for one of the nation's most prestigious carriers. His voice, calm and reassuring over the intercom, was synonymous with excellence and integrity. He embodied everything Captain Miller had lacked, a stark contrast to the prejudice that had once tried to clip his wings. Marcus was a role model for countless aspiring young aviators, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, his journey a powerful testament to talent thriving against adversity. His life was vibrant, purposeful, and filled with the profound joy of pursuing a lifelong dream, a dream he now shared with others. True to the quiet promise he had made to his father years ago, Marcus actively used his position to pay it forward. He became a passionate and vocal advocate for diversity and inclusion in aviation, understanding that the skies should be open to all who dared to dream. He founded Wings of Tomorrow, a nonprofit organization that provided comprehensive scholarships, flight training, and crucial mentorship for minority youth interested in flight careers. He often spoke at schools and community centers, his calm, compelling presence inspiring. He shared his own story, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a narrative of resilience, proving that dreams, even when challenged by prejudice, could take magnificent flight. Mr. Davies, now retired from his demanding role at the FAA but still immensely influential, served on the board of Wings of Tomorrow, his proudest achievement being his son's unwavering commitment to building a more equitable future. Their shared dedication was a powerful force for change, slowly but surely diversifying the face of the American cockpit. The story, in its truest sense, found its culmination high above the clouds. One crisp morning, Marcus, now a seasoned captain, stood in the cockpit of a state-of-the-art Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Below him, clouds stretched like an endless cotton-wool sea, bathed in the golden light of dawn. He looked out at the vast, limitless sky, a picture of quiet confidence and profound fulfillment. The gentle hum of the engines was a familiar lullaby, a testament to a journey completed. He glanced down at his hand, a small, almost unconscious gesture he'd performed countless times. He didn't wear jewelry while flying, but back in his home office, carefully framed and prominently displayed, sat the small, polished, special badge from his youth. The FAA Administrator's temporary visitor's pass that had once turned his world upside down. It was a constant, tangible reminder of the day his dream was challenged, of the moment injustice reared its head, and ultimately, of the unwavering support that had cemented his path. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips. He was not just a pilot flying a plane. He was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience, and a living symbol that dreams, even when confronted by prejudice, could not only take flight, but soar to unimaginable heights, leading the way for others to follow. If this story stirred your heart and reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.